Hi, everyone. I'm Mirela Ciobanu, Senior Editor with The Papers, and we have an important topic for you to discuss today, Central Bank Digital Currencies. Let's face it, existing payment systems based on cash and old technologies no longer meet our needs. This has been proven by payments digitalization brought by COVID, when we started to embrace cashless payments. Also has been proved by the need to conduct cheaper, faster, and fraud-prone cross-border transaction. And of course, proven by the innovation brought by concepts such as stable coins, crypto, DeFi that are forcing traditional financial institutions to modernize their infrastructure. But CBDCs introduced by central banks may change this narrative. And central banks could play an important role in reshaping the future of money. As such, many central banks across the world are exploring CBDCs projects. We have so far 2 retail CBDCs, one in Bahamas and one in Nigeria, and one coming soon in Jamaica. However, there are many pilots and proofs of concepts with central banks communicating publicly about their CBDC work. To learn more on where we are in this journey, we have invited best-selling author of Cashless and Innovation Lab Excellence, Richard Turrin. Richard, nice to meet you.
Hi, Mirella. It's great to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I won't spoil the fun. So I will let you to present who is Richard Turrin for those who do not know it yet. And why is your work relevant for this topic of central bank digital currencies?
Sure, thanks. Hi, everybody. Why should you believe me or anything that I say? Number one, I was an investment banker for 20 years. So when we talk about the fin part of fintech, I know it very well. I then went to head up IBM's fintech programs in China and in Singapore. And most importantly, I've lived in China for more than 10 years. I'm going on year 13 coming up. And frankly, when I wrote a book about China going cashless, it's because I lived it and I went through the transition of China having lots of money and paper, big blocks of currency, cash that we used to use, to WeChat, Alipay, and now central bank digital currency.
Okay, but before we go into the digital yuan that is piloted in China, I want to focus a bit on the recently BIS Innovation Hub white paper with some lessons taken from practical experiments on CBDCs for cross-border payments. If you were to sum up the text of the white paper, what would those be, and what are the main achievements so far with CBDCs experiments?
Sure. Look, to everybody out there, these are the biggest and most important financial infrastructure projects that we have in our lifetime. The BIS has designed 2 principal systems which will allow the exchange of one CBDC for another. So as we head to this world where nations launch their own CBDCs, they'll have an exchange platform. And it's huge because it fundamentally changes the plumbing, the infrastructure of foreign exchange transfers with currencies, because now we have this new concept of immediate finality. You get the coin, you have the money, and that happens instantaneously or near instantaneously on these platforms. So they're super important, and they are, the interesting bit, all located in Asia, all in Hong Kong and in Singapore. So this is part of our Asia-centric CBDC world. And of course, China is leading with the development of its central bank digital currency, the digital yuan.
Okay. What are the main benefits of CBDCs for the payment landscape that you are most excited about? You mentioned this, the plumbing, the immediate finality and the exchange.
Sure. Let's take it, first of all, from a retail perspective on a domestic level and then go international. What is in it for you? Everyone who's listening to me out there, never forget that when you tap an Apple Pay, when you use your phone for Apple Pay, when you use Google Pay, when you tap your card, never forget that you are paying interchange fees, and your merchant, the person who sells you that coffee, is paying merchant fees. We pay tremendous amounts to Visa and MasterCard across the globe. In fact, it's 1.4 from memory, 1.4% of GDP in Europe. 1.4% of the Europe's GDP is spent in payment costs related to cards and card services. And it's even more for the US, 2.1% of GDP. So these are expensive. So when we use domestic CBDC retail products, we will be able to pay me to you without a card company, without a bank, without an intermediary. And that's huge. And the next thing we're looking at is for international transfers. We're looking at a world where we won't have SWIFT. We won't have to pay high costs, high fees for cash transfer. And yes, there'll be charges for it. It won't be free and immediate like it will be for domestic payment, but we're looking at a world where a payment from me to you across the globe will be a matter of minutes and a matter of cents, pennies, or a dollar, or some small amount of money relative to the large amounts that we currently pay now.
But returning a bit to the retail CBDCs, you mentioned this reduction of costs of fees. But at the end of the day, I mean, somebody has to cover for that cost. Who will cover for the cost of all those fees that are currently incurred by Visa, MasterCard, and...
Sure. The central bank and your government is going to have to pay to build the system. And what they will get in return is reduced cash usage, and some of the costs for developing the CBD system will be taken from the very large amounts that are required to print, handle, and transport cash. Cash, believe it or not, is really expensive because we have to count it. We have to put it on armored trucks to move it. We have to stack it into an ATM machine. So there are all these costs to using cash that will gradually disappear. So some of the cost for using a CBDC can be recovered. And of course, the other big thing, especially for the West, the Western governments are paying Visa and MasterCard for use of debit cards, prepaid debit cards, to give to people for aid and assistance payments. So here's the funny thing. The U.S. government pays literally hundreds of millions up a year to Visa and MasterCard in fees for giving away free money to people. So giving away free money is a very expensive business.
So the incentive for end consumers would be that no fees, and for governments that they will have their own rails of conducting all this transactioning with their citizens and eliminate some of the fees. And regarding the wholesale CBDC, well, what will happen with SWIFT? Everyone says, SWIFT won't be, but let's face it, SWIFT is also modernizing their infrastructure.
Look, SWIFT is a very large, very smart, very technologically oriented company. They're not going to go away. They're going to do just fine. However, how we use SWIFT is already starting to change with the new systems that are rolling out with immediate RTGS, global payment. So payment is going to get faster, better, and cheaper. And there's just no way around that. So if you look at SWIFT as a company, their margins, cash transfer, and for the messaging system are going to have to come down. And there's no way around that. But they're not going out of business. They're going to be with us for many years to come.
Okay. So since you mentioned faster, cheaper, I remember that in one of your interviews, now we're returning to your favorite topic, payments in China. So I remember that in one of your interviews, you mentioned that the digital currencies projects we are seeing in China today is where we will be in 5 to 10 years in the West. As I know, yes, that you are an expert on Chinese payment system, what does your comment mean for the digital euro and the digital dollar? And what role does the digital yuan play in macroeconomics?
Okay, so I even go further now. I say 10 years flat. And the reason is China, just so that people understand, China is already mostly cashless. In all the major cities, it's cashless, and even in the second and third tier cities. So it went cashless through the use of the two payment platforms, WeChat Pay and Alipay. So we have an entire society, an entire country that's already used to using QR codes. So China has an 8-year lead in going cashless and already has the CBDC almost ready to launch. Not ready yet, it's in trial, but it's almost ready to go. So they really have a 10-year advantage on the rest of the world. What does this mean? For practical purposes, it means that they will be able to launch their CBDC and have it used in international transfers sooner. Now, that's good. It will eventually mean that it will be easier to buy goods from China and cheaper and faster if you use the digital yuan when it is finally launched for international consumption. Okay? So that's good for China. In the bigger picture, of course, we're looking at the bigger question, which is, can the digital yuan help China to increase use of the yuan in international trade? And the answer is yes. Now, I have a caveat. I want to make sure. Remember before I said SWIFT wasn't going anywhere? Well, the dollar isn't going anywhere either. It's not about the yuan or the digital yuan killing the dollar or removing the dollar. It's about China being less reliant on the dollar for its international trade. So don't expect miracles, but do expect a transition. Within the next 10 years, you'll start to see more and more trade switch over to the digital yuan if you're buying and selling into China. And it will be, again, cheaper and faster. And the thing that people don't understand is that China is developing a digital logistics system. So when you buy with digital yuan, you get access to the digital logistics system, and your trade will go through customs faster. So faster, cheaper, better customs clearance. There will be real advantages to using the digital yuan as opposed to using traditional dollar transfers that we use now.
But it's interesting because also Europe and US has lots of access to technology and how to digitalize payments. And yeah, according to your saying, we are a bit behind in this payment digitalization. What causes this lagging?
Oh, that's a very complicated question. So first thing, congratulations to the EU, because the EU is working hard on the digital euro. And I give the European Central Bank tremendous amount of credit for doing that. And at the same time, the US is far behind, even in basic research when it comes to central bank digital currency. Why? Well, for the US, you can make the simplistic argument that, number one, they're the world's leading currency. And number two, because they're number one, there is no incentive for them to change anything because they're already on top. So any change could potentially be risky for them or bad. The European Central Bank was much more forward-looking. And it looked at the problem of stablecoins, cryptocurrency, and it said that if we want the euro to be successful going forward, we have to go digital. It is a service that we have to provide for our citizens. And that's sort of a difference. The ECB looks at its role and says, our job is to give our citizens the best cash transfer system possible. The Federal Reserve looks at its role as a little bit more protectionistic of the banks and less looking out after the common person. Forgive me, but that's, I think, an accurate characterization of the two central banks.
Yeah. However, in the US, there are many progress on these stable coins. I mean, there are many that are dollar pegged versus euro pegged. So maybe this is their approach, starting with stable coins and see how they work, but not algorithmic ones, and then maybe launch the CBDC. So we talked about, regions. Now, what's the role of geopolitics in all this? If we think about these big three areas, the Asian, China, US, Europe.
It's huge. I mean, look, we're in a new world. We have a currency system that was based after post-World War II, Bretton Woods, everyone knows the story. We have SWIFT. We have a system that has worked very well for some for quite a long time. But now we're looking at a new world of digital currencies that won't travel on SWIFT, may not obey sanctions. And we have to be thinking that this will be something new. And we're already seeing it. We've seen 2 or 3 new laws proposed, but none adopted in the United States that all attempt to restrict or ban the use of the digital yuan. There was actually a law that was not passed that would have required the American Olympic athletes not to use the digital yuan when they went for the Olympics. And there was just a new law proposed about a month ago saying that the digital yuan could not be used in the United States. And, China is not using the digital yuan in the United States. It's not even launched yet. So we're already seeing the geopolitics, the conflict between what will eventually be a bifurcated payment system, some with China access and some without China access. And that's the reality of the times that we live in. There's nothing we can do to change that, but someone somewhere is going to make money, probably Singapore, probably Hong Kong, places where the digital RMB will meet the someday digital dollar and transfer and or allow for free movement. Somebody's going to profit on that.
Yeah. So I was thinking to look into the crystal ball, but somehow you kind of answered who will be the first to roll out their digital version of the cash. So it was Europe, the US, China, but you kind of set a top. But to sum it up, where will be in 5 years' time with this discussion?
Okay, here's where we're going to be, friends. All of you are going to have digital wallets in 5 years. And in those digital wallets, you will pick the currency that suits what you want to buy. If you want to use the digital euro to pay for something, go ahead. If there's a digital euro stable coin, there is already. But if you want to use a stable coin to pay for something, go ahead. If that suits you, be my guest. And if you want to use crypto, you'll be able to pick and choose the currency in your wallet according to your immediate needs. But on a international level, you will be able to use and access some central bank digital currencies for transfer. Obviously, if you're Eurozone, you'll have the digital euro. And if you want to send that digital euro to somebody in Thailand, in Singapore, you'll be able to connect with your digital euro through a system and make a fast and nearly immediate and inexpensive transfer. That's the future we're living into. And the thing that people don't realize is it's coming faster than they think. It's 3 to 5 years out. Not that everyone will have this in 5 years, but the first of these systems will be available for use in 3 to 5 years. So we're living in this digital world. It's coming fast.
So, Richard, thank you for today's talk. I now need to get hurrying to read your books of Cashless in China to get ready to have the wallet before this 3 to 5 years time span.
There's the book over my shoulder. And by the way, do you note that the book has a QR code on it, on the cover? Because everybody in China pays with QR codes, which is another transition that will come to Europe as well. Everybody will use QR codes there too someday.
Yeah, it's already starting to be adopted. So thank you, Richard, for today's talk. Very energetic. And I'm looking forward for a follow-up to our story today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mirella. I look forward to it. If you agree or disagree with me, reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you so much.